Slade's radio, under the maple tree. Metallica under a hooded sweatshirt. A slight explosion. 9 or 10 throws. Finish. The ritual of the bus ride. Eating it. Cheering from the back of the bus. Slade ate his radio on the bus ride home. That's not some kind of weird, confusing figure of speech either. He actually ate his radio. I sat and cheered him on as he did it, along with most of the rest of my teammates. I know, weird turn of events. I'll explain. After the race, Coach called us all together. We sat in our racing gear under a big maple tree, some of us on a rickety picnic table, others on the yellow grass. We drank Gatorade and water. We ate bananas and granola bars and quietly discussed our efforts while we waited on him. All the while, we avoided the obvious plotline of the day, the fact that Slade had simply stopped running his race when it got tough. Hyder and Keane had finished a very respectable 13th place and had the best 2 freshman times of the day, both averaging 5:07 a mile. Victor and Kitty Cat had run solidly, placing in the low 20s, and Yost and Bowden put in a smart, workmanlike effort that got them in the top 30. Overall, we placed a respectable 9th out of 20 decent teams. While this was all well and good, there was a clear cancer, a malignant tumor on our day in the form of the team of Jeff, Slade, and me. Slade sat apart from the rest of us, his Walkman turned up so loud we could all hear the furious thumping of Metallica. Coach arrived with a clipboard and began calmly dissecting our day's performances. Less than half a minute passed before he stopped talking and tilted his head like a dog hearing a high-pitched whistle. "What the hell is that noise?" he asked. Nobody spoke. We glanced at each other and then at Slade. Coach followed our eyes and noticed Slade, his hooded number 1 sweatshirt on, in spite of the nearly 90-degree heat, the hood pulled up and his eyes down, his music blaring. Coach stared at Slade then. He stared and stared, seemingly counting on that sixth sense we have that lets us know when we're being looked at. Slade, however, wasn't going to acknowledge him. "Slade," Coach said. "Slade!" Then he put down his clipboard and walked over to Slade, pulled down his hood and tore the headphones off his head, pulling the little plug-in out of the side of the Walkman. Coach stood there, Slade's headphones in his hand, the cord dangling, and there was a moment when you could see Slade deciding what to do. Should he punch Coach? Should he grab for his headphones? Should he simply tuck his Walkman into the pouch on his sweatshirt and stare while Coach continued on? Well, he did none of those things. What he did was this. He stood up slowly and breathed deeply, glaring at Coach. An ugly, angry, mean look crossed his face as he reared back and threw his little tape player at the maple tree we sat under as hard as he could. When it hit the tree, it didn't explode as I might have thought it would. The cover flew off, the batteries flew out, but otherwise it stayed together. "That all you got?" said Coach. And then he walked over and picked up the Walkman and threw it just as hard at the tree as Slade had. This time the impact did cause a slight explosion. Some shrapnel hit Swart in the head. "Hey," he said as he slinked away, arms protecting the back of his skull. The runners who were spread out on the ground near the tree hopped away and moved over. Slade stared as Coach picked up the Walkman again. "Look," he said quietly, "I'm not done. I ain't completed the job I set out to do. I better finish." He threw it again at the tree, causing more bits and pieces to fly off. By this time, everyone had cleared out of the area entirely, trying to avoid flying bits of metal and plastic. Coach went and picked it up yet again. "If you're going to start something," he said calmly, "you better damn well finish it." And he threw it one more time against the tree. We stood there and watched in silence as Coach repeatedly threw Slade's tape player against that tree time and time again, until it didn't resemble a Walkman at all anymore. There were so many pieces after about the 9th or 10th throw, it might have once been a flashlight, a kid's toy, or a camera. It was when it achieved this state that Coach collected all the pieces he could find, picking them out of the grass and from off the picnic table where we'd been sitting, and took them to Slade. Slade held out his hands automatically, and Coach dumped what was once his Walkman into them. "Learn to finish, Slade. Learn to finish." Slade looked down at the pile of trash that had been his tape player. He then looked up and locked eyes with Coach. Neither said a word. Slade was nearly a foot taller than Coach. His angry blue eyes peered down into Coach's dark brown eyes. The two stood face to face, only inches apart. It was a showdown, a competition of wills if I've ever seen one. Then Slade, without unlocking his eyes from Coach's, shifted the remnants of his radio to his left palm, took up a small shard of metal with his right hand and placed it in his mouth. Then he began to chew with an awful cracking sound. Coach jammed his finger into Slade's chest. "Now finish it," he growled. The bus ride home after every meet, as I was soon to learn, was a ritual heavy with meaning. It was a ritual in that there were rules and procedures, all of course unspoken. One of the rules was that the girls sat in the front of the bus and the boys in the back. That was true going and coming from meets. Another rule was that the best seats were the back seats, and those seats belonged to seniors. Generally, age dictated how near the front of the bus you had to sit. However, if you were a freshman or a sophomore and were called to sit in the back of the bus by a senior, then a junior or even a senior lacking in prestige would move forward and you'd get to sit in back. Slade, by virtue of being team captain, and it should be said by virtue of being the meanest guy on the team, the guy most prone to actually kicking someone's ass if they didn't do what he wanted, always sat in the back seat. This was where Slade sat on this day, the day that we would always remember as the day he ate his Walkman. Keane, my brother, and I were called back only minutes into the ride to serve witness. "Does it hurt?" Yost asked, a look of disgust and horror on his face. "Not yet," said Slade. He popped a bit of wire into his mouth and swallowed. "When he takes a dump," Bowden said, a grin on his face, "that's when it's going to hurt." As the city turned to stretches of country and we approached home, Slade showed a side of himself we three privileged bluebirds hadn't seen before. He was funny. He talked about how it tasted. "Like chicken," he said. He told Sword he was going to keep his crap, the one he would soon have, with the undigested portions of the radio in it, in a Tupperware container and bring it into practice on Monday to show him. "And you can have it," he told Sword. "Good mile," he said to me as he prepared to swallow a pill-sized piece that seemed to have once been the volume control. The back of the bus grew quiet when he addressed me. "Thanks," I said. "Sorry I went out so fast." My eyes dropped. "You'll learn," he said. "Bet you're happy I pussied out." I wasn't sure what to say, so I just shrugged. "You know," he said, now talking to all three of us freshmen lucky enough to have been invited to the back of the bus, "you guys could be pretty good." He didn't eat the batteries. He thought there was acid in batteries or something else that might really hurt him. But he finished the radio about the time our bus rolled back onto the familiar streets of home. When he swallowed the last bit, a metal spring of some sort, the back of the bus erupted in a cheer. "What the hell's going on back there?" Coach shouted upon hearing our cheer. "Finished it," said Slade. "What the hell are you talking about?" Coach said. "My radio. I finished it," said Slade. Coach shook his head. "You gotta be kidding me," he muttered. "How come the only time you idiots listen to me is when I'm totally messing with you?" He grabbed his head as if he had a terrible headache. "Oh my God, you're gonna be in the hospital in 5 hours. The bus driver stared wide-eyed at Coach. Coach stared right back. "Well," he said defensively to the gray-haired man behind the wheel of the bus, "how the hell long do you think it's going to take him to shit that son of a bitch out?"